Do you remember the good old days when Starfire Protocol ruled the Destiny 2 universe? The days of low-man raid clears, chucking as many grenades as possible. Ah, good times. But alas, the great nerf of 2023 changed the game. Starfire fell from its place atop the throne, and Sunbracers took to the stage as the new main contender, albeit not quite hitting the same high notes in boss damage. For in this video, we're going to be deep diving into a new Starfire build, examining how it stacks up against its pre-nerf glory, and how it fares against the current Sunbracers build. Let's see if this revamped Starfire setup can reclaim the throne and bring back the grenade spamming days of old. And remember to leave a like if you found this video helpful. And if you like seeing build videos and other helpful Destiny 2 content, consider hitting that subscribe button. We recently hit a big milestone. 1,000 of you decided to stick around and join me on this YouTube journey, and words can't describe how grateful I am. With that being said, let's jump right on into the video. The old Starfire build had three main advantages, those being putting out high numbers in damage phases, massive ad clearing with grenade spam, and high super regeneration from grenade kills. We're going to look at the current Starfire and Sunbracers build and see how they fare in these categories. First up, the new Starfire build. It has amazing ad clearing potential because of how quickly we can get our grenade back, and this also leads into the second factor, super regen. Since we get our grenade back so quickly, we can still generate mass amounts of super energy with grenade kills. When comparing this to Sunbracers, Sunbracers is definitely better. This is the main purpose of the exotic Sunbracers. Since you can pop your melee and then throw 5 grenades and repeat the cycle over and over, nothing will even come close to the ad clearing potential of Sunbracers. However, Starfire still does a decent job at ad clear, and since the grenades blow up twice and we get 2 of them, you can do higher single target damage. So Starfire definitely takes the advantage against mini bosses and champions. And this is where Starfire really starts to shine. Because of its ability to deal high damage to single targets, it's a good option for anything from small adds all the way up to boss damage. In terms of DPS phases, in my opinion, Starfire still takes the cake when it's compared against Sunbracers. Is it as good as it once was? No. But it still puts out decent damage with the added benefit of good ad clear and good super regen. Let's break it down. Alright, let's take a look at the super and the abilities. First up, the super. We're of course going with Well of Radiance. It's still the best super in the game. It gives you healing, it gives you damage buffs, and gives you damage resistance. It's enough said, it's OP. Alright, moving on to the abilities. First up, I'm taking Phoenix Dive. Now, I know what you're thinking. Hold up, we're using Phoenix Dive on a Starfire build? You're just plain stupid. Stupid. I'll explain it in a second when we get to the fragments, but this is actually pretty pivotal to this build. Alright, for the melee, I'm taking Incinerator Snap. I like Snap for the shorter cooldown, but if you want to use the other melee because it has longer range, then go for it. It doesn't really affect the build too much. And for the grenade, we're of course using the Fusion Grenade. Since this is a Starfire build, Fusion Grenade is critical so that we can carry 2, and with our aspect, it's going to do even more damage. Plus, Starfire gives the Fusion Grenade an extra 20% cooldown reduction. Alright, moving on to the aspects. First up, Touch of Flame. This is a no-brainer. This always has been for Starfire builds. It makes it so your Fusion Grenade will explode twice. And because of the second explosion, Fusion Grenades now deal more total damage per grenade than a Solar Grenade. I believe this is around 33% more damage, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Alright, the second aspect that I'm taking is going to be Heat Rises. Originally, I thought about Icarus Dash because usually you use Empowering Rift and you want to be on the ground, so Heat Rises can only do so much. But since we are using Phoenix Dive for this, we can pair it with Heat Rises. And not only are we going to get our melee back quicker whenever we do get kills in the air, but we're also going to gain restoration when we use our Phoenix Dive and we have Heat Rises active. Icarus Dash is fun, so it still does work, but technically speaking, Heat Rises is way better. Alright, moving on to the fragments. And first up, this is the biggest one. Ember of Benevolence. This is where the build is truly formed. Ember of Benevolence makes it so that when you apply Cure, Radiant, or Restoration to allies, you're granted an extra 400% regeneration for all of your abilities, and you get that for 6 seconds. And this is the main reason why I'm using Phoenix Dive. Since I can dive onto my teammates and give them Cure, I can now gain all of my abilities back at a super fast rate, which allows me to repeat the cycle over and over again. We'll break it down a little bit further later, but for now, let's move on to the next fragment. Next up is going to be Ember of Searing. Defeating a scorched target is now going to grant melee energy and create a fire sprite. Everything from our grenades to our melee to our weapons will scorch targets, so we can generate a ton of fire sprites and get back more melee energy. And then we're also going to pair this with Ember of Mercy, so that whenever we pick up one of those fire sprites, we're granted restoration. This does add a small benefit that if you revive an ally, you and them will get restoration, so you can proc Ember of Benevolence as well, but it doesn't happen that often. And finally, Ember of Empyrean. We're getting solar weapon kills or ability kills will extend the restoration or radiant that you have. If you don't have great armor, you could switch this out for Ember of Resolve. That way you don't have to take the burden of the extra -10 resilience. And Ember Resolve would give you cure whenever you do get grenade kills. All right, let's move on to the stats and the mods. First up, the highest stat we're going to be taking is going to be resilience. I'm going to shoot for 100. Having that extra 30% damage resistance is always going to be nice. With Warlocks, yes, you do want to have pretty high recovery, but in most cases, having the extra damage resistance could be enough to keep you alive. Next up, I'm also shooting for 100 discipline. Since this is a grenade build and we want to spam our grenades as much as possible, this is going to be critical. Make sure that you have 100 discipline no matter what. After that, I'm looking at either recovery or intellect. It's nice to be able to get our super back pretty quickly, but you're able to do that fairly easily with this build. So honestly, having pretty high recovery is pretty important. So not only can you get your class ability back, but you're going to start that regen quicker. All right, for the mods, in our helmet slot, first up, I'm taking Ashes to Assets, where we're going to gain bonus super energy on grenade kills. Again, this is a grenade build, so might as well take advantage of that. Get a little bit extra super energy so you can pop your Well of Radiance kind of whenever you want. And if you're wanting to get your super back even quicker, then I also pair this with Dynamo. Since you are trying to Phoenix dive near your teammates, a lot of times that could be near enemies, and you'll gain a little bit extra super energy whenever that does happen. Otherwise, I'd go for Heavy Ammo Finder to increase your drop chance for heavy ammo, and Harmonic Siphon, which now makes it so 2 rapid solar weapon kills are going to create orbs. All right, moving on to the arms. First up, I'm taking Firepower. This is going to make it so grenade final blows create orbs. Again, this is kind of a no-brainer. We're just taking advantage of the fact that we are a grenade build and going to generate more orbs for us and our team. And this time, I'm actually pairing it with our classic Wombo combo, Impact Induction and Momentum Transfer. It's going to make it so when you cause damage with a powered melee, you get your grenade energy back. And vice versa, when you cause damage with a grenade, you're going to get your powered melee back. I like to do this Wombo combo, especially in this case, so now we can use our powered melee to fund back even more of our grenade. And we do have 2 grenades that we're going to be constantly chucking. So those are going to be able to feed into each other, giving us more ability energy overall back. All right, moving on to the chest. We are going to take 3 resistance mods, and it's going to kind of depend on the content that you're going to be doing. I usually like to take at least 1 harmonic, since it is a little bit cheaper, and then usually 1 of each of the other elements, being void and arc in this instance. All right, let's move on to the legs. For the legs, I have 2 different scenarios. One, where you're going into a raid-like scenario and doing boss damage, and the other when you're playing casual content, like let's say Spire or something like a Nightfall. In the raid-like content, you're going to want the extra weapon damage. So you're going to want to take 3 weapon surges. Usually I take 3 solar weapon surges, since I usually like to run a solar heavy with this build. That's going to grant us 22% weapon damage to both our primary weapon and our heavy weapon. And since it is a boss DPS build for this one, then we're going to need to max our weapon damage. Sometimes I do like to run this with Wither Horde. So if I am running Wither Horde, then my ideal is going to be 1 kinetic and 2 solar. But if you aren't running Wither Horde, then stick to the matching element for your heavy. Now, if you aren't running those raids or dungeons, instead, I like to take Recuperation, Innervation, and Harmonic Scavenger. Now, orbs will give you a burst of health from Recuperation. You're going to get more grenade energy back from Innervation, and then you'll gain more heavy ammo from those heavy ammo bricks. If you don't want to think about it too much, honestly, just go with the weapon surge. All right, last up for our mark. First up, I'm going to take Bomber. Using our class ability is going to grant grenade energy. Since grenade kills give us back our class ability, I want to have our class ability give us back grenade energy. And this is going to be a 20% boost to our grenade. So now, not only when we are using our Phoenix Dive on our teammates, it's going to proc that 400% regeneration, but it's also going to give us an instant 20% boost back to our grenade. Next up, I'm also taking Reaper, so that our next weapon kill after using our class ability is going to create an orb. Again, we are trying to Phoenix Dive a ton, so might as well take advantage of that and generate a ton of orbs. That can be super helpful if you are running the casual build, since you will be getting back even more grenade energy from that. Otherwise, you're just fueling your weapon surge. And finally, I'm going to take Powerful Attraction, so we pick up nearby orbs whenever we're using our class ability. Again, we're trying to Phoenix Dive basically all the time, so that we're getting grenade energy back and proccing Ember of Benevolence. So we want to also be able to pick up those orbs that are nearby. Not only are they going to give us more super energy back to pop our well again, but potentially either weapon surge or more grenade energy. All right, so how does all this work? Well, the fusion grenade has a very short cooldown, which allows us to take advantage of Ember of Benevolence. At 100 discipline, our grenade recharge is every 36 seconds, and that's actually even shorter because of our exotic, which is going to give another 20% shorter cooldown on top of that. But ignoring that fact, with the 6 seconds of 400% regen, that means we get 66% of a grenade back every 6 seconds, just with Benevolence procced, excluding the exotic. The main way we can proc it is by Phoenix Diving on a teammate or using our well, since both of those will give Cure and Radiant. There are exceptions like Lumina and weapons with heal clip that can also proc it, but I'll touch on that later. Let's take a look at this scenario. You've just thrown both your grenades. They've killed at least 1 target, giving back even more super energy, creating an orb and a fire sprite. You can Phoenix Dive onto your teammate, picking up the orb and giving you 20% grenade from Bomber while proccing Benevolence. When you pick up the fire sprite, you're going to gain Restoration and 12.5% grenade energy. And in the process, you can also use your powered melee to gain an additional 20% grenade energy. energy. In the 6 seconds that pass from the moment you Phoenix Dive on a teammate, you've now gained roughly 1 full grenade and 20% of another. And if you're running the ad clearing build that uses innervation, you'll gain at least another 10%, if not more, since creating orbs is so easy. If you're in damage phases, it's a little bit different. You can assume you will proc Benevolence when you put down your first super, and then you can proc it again when you use your Phoenix Dive. You can still use your melee to get back 20%, and in the background, you gain 2.5% every 0.4 seconds from Wither Horde. This makes it so I can reliably get out roughly 4 grenades per damage phase, assuming damage phases are about 30 seconds to 45 seconds. And this build excels when you're using a Demolitionist rocket. It also works pretty well with linears, something like Sleeper, since you should get your grenade back almost every time you have to reload, so you can gain a bit of extra free damage. Alright, I'll briefly touch on the artifact for this season, though this build will persist throughout this season. In column 3, we want to take Elemental Orb Solar, so that when we get solar weapon kills, we have a chance to create an Elemental Orb. Column 4, we want Elemental Fury, Communal pickups, and Refreshing pickups. Orbs will now deal more damage to stun champions, and when an ally uses our orb, its cooldown is reduced by 5 seconds, and we get bonus solar weapon damage. Plus, when we pick up an Elemental Orb or a Tangle, we're granted ability energy for release charge ability. And in column 5, we want Monochromatic Maestro, so that we can use our weapons to buff our abilities and our abilities to buff our weapons. And then finally, I'm going to choose Elemental Munitions, where kills with Elemental Orbs now have a chance to drop heavy ammo. Alright, let's talk weapons and what weapons work best for a build like this. First up in our kinetic slot, I do like to take a heavy hitter mostly, and most of the time I like to take Wither Horde. It's still the best option since you will be getting a 2.5% of your grenade back every 0.4 seconds. Osteo can gain this tick damage, but it's not the best option for boss rotations. Wither Horde's definitely going to be my #1 pick. Alternatively, you could use Lumina. It's another great option since Lumina's tracking rounds will actually proc Ember of Benevolence, which will give you another way to get on-demand ability regeneration for all of your abilities. Not only that, it will give you and your teammate a 35% weapon boost, which is going to be more than Well of Radiance. It's a good option, but it's not my favorite, so I like to stick with Wither Horde, or honestly, any other weapon that has Demolitionist. Not only is it going to give you an ability to do instant reload, which is great for ad clearing, but it's also going to generate more grenade energy when you are getting kills with that weapon. Alright, moving on to the energy slot. I want to take a solar weapon, mainly one that has heal clip and preferably incandescent. Heal clip when you're near a teammate will proc Ember of Benevolence, which is going to give you increased ability regeneration. It's not ideal for your weapon since there are things like reconstruction that usually this is going to take the place of, but honestly I like to focus on my abilities with this build and not necessarily my weapon. So I'm more going to use that heal clip as a way to just proc Ember of Benevolence if I happen to get out of rotation and not have any of my abilities. It's kind of like a saving grace. A few weapons that you can do this with are going to be the Igneous Hammer, which you can get from Trials. It is a hand cannon and it can roll with heal clip and incandescent. Abyss Defiant is also great. It's a high impact assault rifle that comes from Crota's End, and it can roll with heal clip and incandescent. It's also going to be craftable. Or with this new Halloween event coming up, you have Jurassic Green. It can roll with heal clip and incandescent, so be on the lookout for that. Alright, moving on to our heavy weapon. A few great options are going to be Apex Predator, Hothead, and Briars. All are great legendary options, and they do amazing boss damage. All 3 of these can roll with Demo, which is going to allow us to have an instant reload. Something like Demo is going to be a little bit better than something like Reconstruction, especially for Apex Predator, since you're only really going to be able to proc it once, which is going to save you 1 reload. And if you can throw your grenade 4 times, then you're going to be able to get 4 free reloads as well as do extra damage. Hothead's also a good option, but it can't roll with bait and switch, and it's also not a solar weapon, so the synergy with Apex Predator is just the best. Some other exotics that could be good are going to be a Sleeper Stimulant and Galhorn. Both are great for damage phases, and if you are going to be Galley, you're going to be buffing all the rockets for your team. No, it doesn't have Demolitionist intrinsically, but it's still nice to help out the team even more. Sleeper's also pretty good because it only holds 4 in the mag, so every time you do have to reload, which will at least be 3 times, you can throw a grenade in between. Some other great options if you aren't trying to do the most damage for boss phases are going to be Heir Apparent, Unwavering Duty, and Avalanche. All are exceptional at ad clearing and great for most activities. When we put all the puzzle pieces together, we get a build that consistently gives Cure, Restoration, massive ability regeneration, massive super regeneration, amazing ad clear, a mini boss clearing machine, and impeccable boss DPS, while at the same time giving your team a well. No, you can't do more damage than teammates that are using one and done supers, but you will be able to provide your team with another well, and you should be able to out DPS any other teammate that is also using a well. This build isn't as good as it once was, but it was way overpowered. It's now actually a solid build. It almost feels like the equivalent to the Titan Hoyle builds. They used to be stupidly broken, and now they offer stability and a good balance that can be pretty good at pretty much everything. Let me know your thoughts of the build. Will you be trying out the Starfire build in Season 22 or sometime in the future? What would you change or how would you improve it? If you like the video and you want to see more content like this, smash that like button and subscribe. That's it for me. Peace out.